The week before Christmas settled over the city like a held breath. Snow fell without urgency, soft and patient, covering streets, rooftops, and old memories alike. The radio station stood quietly at the edge of town, its brick walls worn by time,
Please subscribe
its
to our
windows
channel.
glowing faintly against the winter darkness. Inside, the air felt still. Daniel Harper sat alone behind the control desk, surrounded by blinking lights and humming machines. The clocks on the wall ticked slowly, each second stretching longer than the last. No laughter echoed through the halls. No footsteps hurried past. The station, once alive with voices and energy, now felt like a forgotten room in an old house. Christmas decorations hung where someone had placed them out of habit. A small tree stood near the corner, its lights dim, its ornaments untouched. Dust rested gently on the shelves, as if even time had chosen to move carefully here. Daniel adjusted the sound levels with practiced hands. He had done this for years. Quiet work. Invisible work. Work that required no words. Outside, cars passed with headlights glowing like distant stars. Families hurried home. Windows glowed warm across the city. Somewhere, dinners were being prepared. Gifts wrapped. Laughter shared. Here, there was only silence. Daniel preferred it that way. Silence did not ask questions. Silence did not remind him of what was missing. He had learned how to live inside it. Yet Christmas had a way of slipping through cracks.
Please subscribe to our
A
channel.
faint melody drifted from a neighboring studio where an old system still ran test tracks. Daniel paused. The sound barely existed, but it carried weight. A hint of warmth. A memory stirring. He closed his eyes for a moment. The smell of pine returned unexpectedly. Soft yellow lights. A kitchen filled with quiet happiness. His mother moving gently through the room, believing deeply in small joys. Daniel opened his eyes again. The station lights flickered slightly. The machines continued their steady hum. The silence returned, heavier now, layered with something unseen. Christmas was coming whether he welcomed it or not. And somewhere, buried beneath years of restraint and routine, something inside Daniel began to listen again. Not from the weather, but from the quiet that stretched deeper than usual. The halls were empty, the kind of empty that made every small sound feel louder. Daniel moved through the building slowly, his footsteps echoing against old tile floors worn smooth by decades of work. In the far corner of the main studio, beneath a desk that no one used anymore, he noticed a small cardboard box. It had been there for years. Its edges were soft. The tape had yellowed. Dust clung to it like a second skin. Daniel knelt down without knowing why, as if the box had called him. He lifted the lid. Inside were cassette tapes and old digital drives, carefully wrapped in paper that had once been white. Faded handwriting covered the labels. Holiday broadcast. Christmas Eve special. Elvis Presley. Daniel's hands froze. The name alone carried weight. Not fame. Memory. He carried the box to the mixing table and wiped the dust away carefully, as though touching something fragile. Each tape felt heavier than it should have, as if holding more than sound. He loaded the first track. The room changed instantly. Elvis's voice filled the studio, warm and steady, rich with a calm that felt untouched by time. It wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It simply arrived, like a fire being lit in a cold room. The machines hummed softly around him, but the music stood apart. Daniel leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on nothing. The melody moved slowly, gently, carrying scenes from another life. His childhood living room appeared in his mind. Soft lights. Wrapped gifts. His mother smiling without reason, humming along while pretending not to know the words. The second song played. Then the third. Each one opened another door. He felt something loosen in his chest. A tightness he had learned to live with began to soften. The music didn't erase the ache. It gave it space to breathe. By the time the 10th song ended, the studio felt different. Warmer. Alive. Daniel realized these songs were not forgotten. They were waiting. Waiting for someone to listen. Night wrapped itself around the radio station as Christmas Eve approached. The city outside grew quieter, as if even the streets were preparing to rest. Snow clung to windows in thin, delicate patterns. Streetlights cast long reflections across empty roads, turning the world beyond the glass into something dreamlike and distant. Inside the station, only one light remained on. Daniel sat alone at the control desk, the glow of the monitors painting his face in soft blues and greens. The old building creaked gently, settling into the cold. The hum of equipment felt steady, familiar, almost comforting. On the screen in front of him, the playlist waited. 10 songs. A complete Christmas collection. No advertisements followed them. No voiceovers framed them. Just silence before and after, like a pause meant to be respected. Daniel hesitated. This broadcast wasn't scheduled. No one had asked for it. The station barely had listeners anymore. Choosing to play it felt small, almost foolish. Yet the memory of his mother's hands adjusting a radio dial returned to him. Her belief that music did not need permission to matter. That warmth should be offered, not guarded. He leaned forward. With one quiet motion, he set the playlist live. At exactly midnight, the first notes drifted out into the dark. The music traveled beyond the station walls, slipping into cars moving through empty highways, into late-night kitchens, into hospital rooms glowing with quiet machines. It found people who weren't expecting anything special. The voice carried calm. A steady presence. A reminder that the world could still slow down. As the songs played, the station remained silent except for the music. Daniel sat back, listening, letting the sound move through him instead of past him. Lights blinked on the console. Messages began to appear on the system screen. Emails arrived. Notifications stacked slowly, then all at once. People writing without knowing who would read their words. They spoke of memories returning. Of warmth felt unexpectedly. Of tears that came without warning. Daniel read every line. With each one, something inside him lifted. The broadcast ended the way it began. Gently. The silence that followed no longer felt empty. It felt full. Christmas morning arrived without urgency. The sky was pale and quiet, the kind of morning that felt wrapped in a soft promise. Snow rested gently on rooftops and tree branches, untouched and calm. The city moved slowly, as if giving itself permission to breathe. Inside Daniel's small apartment, warmth lingered. A modest Christmas tree stood near the window, its lights glowing softly even in the daylight. Ornaments reflected the pale winter sun, casting small, fragile patterns on the walls. The radio sat on the shelf, low but present, filling the room with a familiar sound. Elvis's voice drifted through the air once more. Daniel sat on the couch, wrapped in an old blanket, his coffee cooling on the table beside him. Across the room, Lily sat quietly on the floor, her legs tucked beneath her, listening. She wasn't distracted. She wasn't restless. She was still. The music seemed to hold her attention in a way Daniel hadn't seen before. Each note settled gently into the room, creating a space where nothing else mattered. Daniel watched her face soften. Her breathing slow. The world outside faded into something distant. For a moment, he felt the presence of someone else there with them. Not as a memory that hurt, but as a warmth that remained. His mother's belief filled the room, steady and unspoken. Music as shelter. Music as connection. Daniel felt something change inside him. Grief did not disappear. It shifted. It loosened its grip and allowed gratitude to enter. He realized that the songs were not pulling him backward. They were carrying something forward. He was not losing the past. He was sharing it. Lily leaned closer to the radio, listening as though the voice itself was telling her a story. A story without words. A story of kindness, of gentle strength, of love that lasted beyond time. Outside, church bells rang faintly in the distance. Somewhere, laughter rose and faded. But inside the apartment, peace settled fully. Christmas did not feel empty. It felt complete.